Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Around the Ropes YouTube exclusive. Now, if you guys have been watching the show for the last 3 years, first of all, thank you for watching it. You guys know that we'we've had this unplanned fascination with having on every ring announcer. It seems like in the Northeast. Obviously, you know the ring announcers we've had on. We've had on our very own Ryan Peterson, Shane Fair, Mike Falvo. The list goes on and on. And adding to the list now, he is the ring announcer for not only Tessa Strength, but he does also Immortal Championship Wrestling as well. The one and only Matt DaCorte. Matt, how you doing tonight?
John, thank you again very much for having me on. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today on Around the Ropes. And I'm doing pretty good. And it's been a busy month, but looking forward to sitting down and chatting with you and having some fun.
That's all we try to do here on this show. But before we get into what you do, as a ring announcer, which I will say this much, you are one of the better ring announcers. Let me put it that way. Before we get into that, you're welcome. What got you into pro wrestling? Was there a moment or a match? Like what kind of go back to the beginning, I guess?
Yeah. So initially, when I was younger, I was born in '88, so I first started, realizing what wrestling was in the mid-late '90s, Attitude Era, Monday Night Wars. And my first introduction to it really was I was at my school's Halloween party, and one of my friends, he was dressed up. He had it like a black trench coat. He had white and black face paint, and he was carrying around a baseball bat. And I said, "Who are you supposed to be?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm Sting." And I just looked at him and I said, "What's a sting?" And then he's talking about WCW, NWO, all this stuff, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And but then all my cousins were watching it, all my friends at school were watching it, so I started watching it too. The older cousin's house, I would go hang out there on weekends, and they had the black scrambler box or D scrambler box, whatever you want to call it, if you remember those. And we would watch the big pay-per-views. My parents really weren't too keen on me watching it, especially a lot, so I tended to sneak it in on nights and weekends when they would go out to eat or go grocery shopping or what have you. So my main shows were like WCW Saturday night. I got to see like ECW on Friday nights. Sunday Night Heat was a big one. And like all like the morning syndicated shows on like Saturday, your Live Wires, your Velocities, all that stuff. That's how I got my fix initially. And then it's basically been like a lifelong love of mine, on and off. There were some times where there were some gaps in it, but I always came back to it. And lo and behold, now I'm involved in it, which I never in a million years thought I would be, but I'm very grateful that I am, for sure.
Oh, I that's actually interesting because I've asked a lot of people that question, and I don't think I've had anybody ever tell me that it was ECW and WCW that got them into wrestling. A lot of times it's always been WWF, Attitude Era, Rock, Austin. So, looking at, knowing that you mentioned WCW, we just did a video, God, probably a couple, right around the time when Sting had his last match.
Yep.
For AEW. And we did a WCW Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put you on the spot here right now.
Oh, boy.
Who is your WCW Mount Rushmore?
Okay, so this is going to show the product of when I was watching. So I would definitely say Sting, for me specifically, Crow Sting. I gotta say it, Goldberg. When I was a kid, Goldberg was the man. One of my favorite, quick aside, one of my favorite matches was actually Goldberg versus all of Raven's flock. He destroyed them all in like 5 minutes, but I mean, as a kid, it was friggin' amazing to watch. And so I'd say Sting, Crow Sting, Goldberg. I would probably say Kevin Nash and Hollywood Hogan.
I that's one thing, and I completely agree with your list. I always love putting people on the spot like that with certain things because it always kind of keeps them on their toes a bit.
Yeah. But you see, and the crazy thing is too, because now I'm thinking too, I'm just like, shh. I was like, I should have put DDP on there because I love me some DDP, but I don't know. It's hard. There was a lot of good talent there, even though some towards the end it got a little nutty. But I mean, there was a lot of good talent there at the during that era.
But Matt, what's so funny about these Mount Rushmores is there's no wrong answer.
True.
That's what makes them so much fun. Is it's not like oh who how long did Goldberg's streak last? There's a right answer because everybody kind of knows that answer at this point.
Yep.
But when you ask somebody, who's your Mount Rushmore of WCW, it's really it also, I think also a lot of it depends on the person's age, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have somebody older who was around, in the time when you had Rick and you had not Croson, but you had Surfer Sting, right, and you had all those guys, the early WCW days. Then you had the guys in your age group, my age group, who were like late 80s, early 90s, probably from like late 80s to early 2000s. And then you have the people who may be younger who are going to sit there and go, what's WCW? Then I just tell them that, go watch it on YouTube.
Yep, exactly. And that was the thing. It's like, even thinking back, it's like, you had all the cruiserweights, your Rey Mysterios, your Eddie Guerreros, Chris Jericho. Heck, I even remember one of my favorite angles back in the day was when Hacksaw Jim Duggan found, I think it was like the TV title or something like that, and he pulled it out of the trash can and he just made himself the champion and he defended it, and just little things like that. It was a good time, while it lasted.
And it's funny because I have friends of mine at work now who watched wrestling, back from when you were talking about, the late WCW days. And I was telling them recently, I'm like, yeah, Sting is still wrestling. This is, as of before we got to AEW Revolution.
Right.
And all of a sudden they looked at me, they're like, he's still wrestling? I'm like, uh-huh. It blows my mind when you get people now who aren't wrestling fans, but you mention, oh, so-and-so is still wrestling. Or like, great example, look what's happening right now with The Rock in WWE.
Yep. And that's something too. It's like, at my place of business, I work in the office. I'm an assistant project manager for a commercial construction company, and my direct supervisor, one of the main project managers, he was telling me that he started watching Raw again because The Rock started popping up. So that plays exactly right into what you were saying.
And it blows my mind that it's like the people right now who are doing the best work are the people who have been wrestling for 30 plus years. Because I mean, another example of guys who wrestle, in our generation, look at somebody like Edge and Christian, who are still going at it strong, who just had one hell of a match last week on Dynamite in an I Quit match.
No, absolutely.
It's very funny to see, but I want to get back into you. So you had said, growing up, it was WCW and ECW. Mm-hmm. Now, did you go to want to become, now, when you saw this and you were like, okay, I'm a fan of this, were you like, okay, I want to become a wrestler, or was it always that you wanted to be the ring announcer?
Well, it was one of those things where I wasn't sure how I was gonna, how things were gonna play out. At the time I was maybe like in my preteen years, roughly. And so, I don't even think I was thinking that far ahead. But I do know that when I got older, I did go to school. Like I just said, I work in construction, but believe it or not, I went to school for journalism. I wanted to be a writer, specifically in like entertainment, sports, all that stuff, because unfortunately I wasn't athletically gifted. So, until the ring announcing thing took off, I didn't think I was, I knew I could, I didn't want to be like an actor or anything like that. I love seeing movies. So, and I love wrestling. So I was like, oh, why don't I just, learn how to do this so that way I can write about it. So that way I can stay close and be involved with, things I enjoy, and, just, maybe not participate in them, but, get very close and still be able to enjoy them and get paid to do it. Unfortunately, based on my current profession, as you can see, that didn't really work out. But as time went on, after I got out of college, like I had some office jobs, and I would answer the phone a lot of times at them, and I would always hear people remark, "Oh, you have a nice speaking voice, this and that," and there were times that a few of my friends had like local cover band, they play out at bars on the weekends and stuff like that, nothing major. I would go on stage and do a few songs, here and there every once in a while, and I enjoyed doing that. So I always had a desire to be something more than just 9 to 5, come home, hang out with family and friends, go on weekend getaways or something like that. I wanted to do I knew I was capable of more, and I wanted to do more with myself, and I knew if I ever did find an outlet, that it was going to be my voice that brought me to the dance. And that proved true with wrestling. And it all kind of happened randomly. And as soon as the wheels started spinning, it went from 0 to 60 faster than I ever imagined. Sans for 2020, because yeah, that wasn't that slowed the momentum a little bit, but once that all got taken care of, then it was full steam ahead. And like I said, I got to pinch myself sometimes, because I would have never imagined it's gotten to the point it has. I'm extremely happy and grateful that it did, but if you had asked me 10 years ago if I'd be doing this at the level I'm doing it at, I would have looked at you like you're nuts.
Yeah, I get that feeling. You mentioned before, that you're very big in watching movies. I want to get your thoughts quickly on one movie that just came out recently. That's a wrestling movie.
Yep.
That Iron Claw. Did you get a chance to see it?
I did, and I thought it was very well done. I think you and I might have talked about it at one of the Immortal shows. There was some stuff that was left out, specifically one of the brothers. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it captured the I guess the feel, and it was just it's a tragic story. It's a very tragic story. That line that Zac Efron is Kevin Von Erich says at the end, I used to be a brother, but now I have no brothers. Man, that hurt. That hurt. And like, yeah, it was a very depressing movie, but extremely, extremely well done, I thought.
I agree as well. And it's funny for me. I don't see a lot. I'm not a movie person at all. I mean, I have arguments with friends of mine who will turn around and tell me, "Oh, did you see?" Okay, one of them I'll put out right now. I've never seen any part of The Godfather. And people will joke with me. They're like, "How have you never seen The Godfather?" I'm like, "Because I can't. I don't want to sit there and spend 25 hours of my day watching a movie."
Exactly.
But
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
But the funny thing is, the last movie I saw in theaters before that one, and you're gonna laugh when I say this, was Toy Story 3, or whatever the most recent Toy Story movie was.
Gotcha. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man. I went to go visit a friend of mine. He's got a couple of young ones, and they were watching Toy Story, and I'm not gonna lie, I got into it again. I was just like, oh, this brings me back.
And the funny thing was, for that movie, for Iron Claw, I was like, oh, I'll wait till it comes out on theater. I'm like, it comes out on DVD, or comes out onto Netflix. I'm like, no, I am going to spend however much it costs. Which, by the way, movie theaters got very expensive over the years.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And I was like, for that one, I remember I got out of work, and I remember it was, I think, the day it opened. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see the movie today. And I was gonna take a friend of mine, but I'm like, no, for this movie, I think I gotta go solo.
Mm-hmm.
And you said the line you had said with what Zac Efron said. I still see. I play that clip now from time to time, and I get chills down my spine.
Yeah, it's a very powerful moment. Like I can't imagine what he went through. The pressure from the father, losing literally every single one of his siblings, and it's like some people wouldn't go on. after that, or wouldn't want to go on, but he endured, he went through, and by all accounts, it looks like his family is very happy, healthy. I know he's got two of his kids are in the business now, and they've popped up, MLW, Ring of Honor, AEW here and there. And so, I mean, seeing that he was able to break that cycle, and his family is doing well, that is kind of the silver lining, I guess, to a very, very tragic story for sure.
Oh no, yeah, that was one movie where I remember somebody asked me like, "Oh, like what what's that movie about?" I'm like, "Well, I can tell you right now, it ain't a comedy."
No, 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 no.
I'm like, that's not a Mel Brooks, Spaceballs movie.
Do love me some Mel Brooks, I have to say, but
Oh,
yeah, no.
No, I was gonna say I've seen 90% of the Mel Brooks movies, but going back to with you with the ring announcing.
Mm-hmm.
Now the two bigger companies that you work with are Tessa Strength out in Connecticut, and obviously Immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, did you start off with Tessa Strength and then go to Immortal? Which one was first?
Actually, the first place I started was a place, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, down in East Haven, Connecticut. That was my start. I'm still very close with them. I'm actually working their show on April 6th at Armada Brewing in Brewery, whatever, something like that, in New Haven. So if you're in the New Haven area, they're doing a cool thing where they're going to have PAPW doing the live wrestling. They're going to have night one of WrestleMania on the inside on a big screen projector. So if you're in the area, you like some good drinks, and you want to see some live wrestling and also catch some WrestleMania, come on by and have some fun. But yeah, so that's where I got my start, and Test of Strength was actually, I will say, they were the first place outside of PAPW that booked me. I remember I had I went to the school to they did like a kind of like a social media networking seminar, how to use social media to network and whatnot, and that was the first time I met Slick Wagner Brown. And I remember I'm not the guy that I am now. I was super shy, super nervous, like, socially awkward, anxiety ridden at the time. And I just remember going up to Slick and just being like, hi Slick, my name is Matt DaCorte, and can I maybe do ring announcing if there's ever an opening? Like, all like that. And then he was like, yeah, absolutely. So he said, send me some footage if there's ever a time, I'll hit you up. And so I sent him a couple clips, and said, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. And a few months went by, and I didn't really expect to hear anything at that point. And he finally messaged me back one day, and he said, hey, got an opening, he's like, you in? And I said, yep, absolutely. And that was back, I believe it was October 2019, and been going strong with him ever since. So yeah, that was the start there. And then Immortal, I think I touched on a little earlier, after 2020 was over, and like I would probably say mid 2021 is when things really started going full steam ahead. And I can't remember if it was 21 or 22, but I remember I got a message from someone who you mentioned, Mike Falvo. Mike is a tremendous talent, a great guy, as were a lot of the other people. I shouldn't say a lot, all of the other people that you mentioned as well in the ring announcer category. But I remember he messaged me on Facebook, and like I said, it was either the end of 21 or 22, and I don't think I had even met him in person at that point. And I and Mike, if you see this, please do feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. It's my mind isn't what it once used to be. So if I got some things mixed up, please do feel free to correct me. I did meet him eventually at one point, and like I said, he's a great guy. I consider him a friend and a peer. And I hope our paths cross again in person soon. But anyway, he messaged me and he said, hey, I can't do the show. He goes, if you would want to do it, then I'd be happy to have the promoter reach out to you. And I said, Yeah, absolutely. And so Mike King hit me up, and I did my first show for them. And then, I was on and off with them for a little while. I didn't do every show, but this year I've been very fortunate that I've done every one of their shows thus far in 2024, and I'm with them guaranteed through their show at the Cobleskill Fair on August 6th. I think it's August 6th. It's
Yes, yeah, that sounds about right.
yeah, so and then I'm there at least through that, and hopefully I can do all their shows all the entire year. Immortal is, as I'm sure you know, I've seen you there many times, and they put on a great show. They have great crowds, great product. Joe is one of my favorite sound guys to work with. And so it's a lot of fun up there, a lot of good times, great talent. They bring in some really cool names, like we just had the Dirty Breezango, and whatever you want to call them, the Dirty Dango and Breeze up there.
Mhm.
Suzuki, Minoru Suzuki, Murder Grandpa is coming on July 13th. I am stoked about that. And
Oh,
so,
you mean Matt? You mean this ad right here?
yes, that is the guy. That is the guy. I remember too, because I was texting. Mike had actually sent me the day he made the announcement, but like about like an hour beforehand, he sent me the list of sponsors for this past show, Homecoming 2. And as I was just like, got it, thanks. I'll take a look and jot them down or whatever. And then he goes, wait till you see what we're gonna announce. So I did some dishes, and I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, what's he got? What's he got in store? It's like I know he's brought in some pretty good names before, but like he's really hyping this up. And then I saw that, and I was like, oh damn, like wow.
The funny thing is, he messaged me earlier in the day, and I forgot who we had another YouTube exclusive we were recording that night, and he actually messaged me. Hey, by the way, you guys live tonight? I'm like, no. Well, and in my head, I'm like, why are you? I'm like, I'm like, I know the big thing in that area is a lot of people like to smoke, marijuana. So, I don't know if all of his brain cells are still there. I say that with all the love, Mike. I say that with all the love, but it's true. But I'm like, why is he asking me if we're live when he knows we're live Tuesday nights? I'm like unless it's I specifically say, hey, we're going live with this guest. 10 times out of 10, I usually record it and then put it up later on. And I'm sitting there going, I wonder why he's asking me if we're live. So I forgot what we were doing. I happened to look down at my phone, and I see that I got a notification on Facebook, because Facebook apparently sets up now that certain people and certain pages I get notifications of right away. And I get, Immortal Championship Wrestling. It's in your phone. I'm like, okay, what's Mike? And I looked at the time; it was after 7:00. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be the announcement. Now I'm figuring in my head, because I know we had Chip on the show maybe a few days prior to that announcement. And Chip was saying how, be prepared. Our show in July is going to, be huge. It's going to be guys you see on TV. So in my head, when I heard guys you see on TV, I'm thinking, okay, who are they bringing in from AEW? Who are they bringing in from WWE? It never crossed my mind New Japan, because in my head, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to bring in somebody who's going to be in the area. And I'm looking like, wait a second, WWE's not going to be in the area. AEW's not going to be in the area. I'm like, who the hell? And I figured, okay, it's got to be somebody from MLW then. Like, I was trying to think of the local, I'm saying local companies, but the companies stateside.
Right, exactly. Yep.
And also I see Minoru Suzuki. I'm like, my mouth drops to the floor. I'm like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden I found out that's because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, he must be doing TNA or something. He must be doing something in the States. And apparently he's not. Apparently he is coming in just for this show.
That's incredible.
I heard that one. I was like, so I might turn around to Mike and go, hey, Mike, by the way, if you need somebody to go pick up Minoru or drop him off, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Well, especially for me, because for me, coming to any Immortal shows, I mean, I do it. You were saying before, that you see me. No matter what show it is, especially now that I'm doing the camera work, even before doing the camera work, I still made it to pretty much, I think last year I made every show except the first 2 Westmoreland shows.
Gotcha.
Those are the only 2 I missed, but every other show I was at. And the thing is, people laugh at me. They're like, oh, it's like a 3-4 hour ride for you. I'm like, and your point? I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that's a 3-4 hour ride. Yes, I know I spend more time in the car going to these shows than I'm actually at the show, but it's the experience. And it's, knowing that you're going to get your money's worth when it comes to Immortal.
Exactly. And that's the thing too, because I remember he sent me the dates, but I didn't know the locations at the time, and then I saw July was in Utica, which I know is for me coming. I know you're a little further coming from Long Island, but me being in Connecticut, it's it's still a bit of a ways and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, Utica, that drive's gonna suck. But then, like you said, I saw the poster for Suzuki. Doesn't matter. I drive freaking 8 hours for that. I drive 10 hours for that. You know what I mean? So, like, and plus the fact too, I drive anywhere for Immortal. Like I said, like I know they're upstate New York. Rome is 3.5, 4 hours for me. Don't matter. Like I said, they got good people, good events. Like, you can't ask for more than that. So.
And we talked about Immortal, talking about Test of Strength. Obviously, Test of Strength is in Connecticut, Immortal's in New York. Have you noticed a difference at all in the crowds between the 2 companies?
Yes and no. There definitely is a lot of similarities. When I go to Immortal shows, that you see the regulars there. Guys that my first show I did 2-3 years ago, however long it was up there. They're still coming around now in 2024, which is awesome. And same thing goes with Test of Strength. You see, there's this one group of guys that call they're fans of Ryan Frost. They call themselves the Frost Force. They go out to every show. Always great seeing them. And in terms of the thing that sticks out to me about Immortal is the size of it. Immortal draws like consistently, I would probably say anywhere from like 200 to 400 based on events that I've been involved with them. And Test of Strength, it's not as big. They still draw very well. But it's just a little less. But other than that, like, there's not a really heck of a lot of difference. I will say this though, I did notice in New York that there are some very unique names of towns in upstate New York. If you get them wrong, they'll let you know about it. I accidentally mispronounced. I believe it's, oh God, here we go again. Oneida.
Yes.
Oh, thank God. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I mispronounced Oneida one time, and you would have thought I was Hollywood Hulk Hogan in the 90s based on the reaction of that guy. So yeah, but I mean, it was all right. It happens. It's all in good fun. Like, I wasn't too worried about it. I made a joke out of it and people laughed. So, I got him back, but that other than,
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, other. All right, you go.
No, I was going to say, not that I had a similar experience, but I had one experience up there, not mispronouncing the name, but I forgot who I was talking to. It was one of the people up there. And I actually called it Central New York. And you would have thought I like ran over a cat or something. You're like, we're not Central New York. I'm like, okay, first of all, from my perspective, from down here in Long Island, especially where I am, I'll put it this way for people to put it in reference so people will get this. I'm an hour west of Montauk. if that puts into perspective of how far into Suffolk I am and how far into Long Island I am. I'm
Yeah,
like, from my area, I'm like, that's central New York. I look at upstate New York as like, Plattsburgh, upstate. And they're like,
right.
no, you're upstate. I'm like, okay, I'll call you. I'm like, okay. I'm like, let's pump the brakes here. But no, I could definitely see that if you mispronounce one of the towns up there, and especially up there, the issue I've noticed, and again, I've noticed this, from seeing you in action, Ryan also in action, a lot of them are Indian reservation names. So a lot of them, it's like you have to look at it, you're like, okay, how the hell do I pronounce this one?
Yep. Yeah, that's and that's kind of one of the guys up there, Pat Sawyer. He bills himself from the Tyandanega reservation. And so I remember the first time he said that, I was about to write it down, and like before I even wrote anything, I looked back up. I'm like, say that again slower. And so like I literally spelled it out phonetically with like hyphens in between, so that way when I'm reading it, like I can say it like it's read, so that way I don't make that same mistake. So
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. But I've noticed, I mean, for me, I've noticed not so much a difference, when I see more of a difference between the New York crowd and the New Jersey crowd.
yep.
The New Jersey crowd to me might as well be the modern day version of what ECW was back in the day.
I've heard.
Especially if you go to that little building called the Mecca in Ridgefield Park. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
I've seen some stuff.
Yeah, I did. I did actually work an event down there, I think a couple summers ago now, and it wasn't the biggest crowd for that one, but still, I can definitely see where that would come from for sure.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've noticed is the New Jersey crowd is like, I remember, most of the shows I had gone to in the start when I started this podcast were in New Jersey. A lot of them were Ridgefield Park, and then when I got introduced to Immortal, and then to Dynasty, all those other companies, I was like, so great. All I basically do is go to the city. If I go 2 hours this way, if I go 2 hours south, I have to deal with rowdy crowds, and if I go 2 hours, 3 hours north, I deal with rowdy crowds, but not to the same level.
Yep. It's a different kind of rowdy because like I know the Immortal crowd, they're into just about everything, which is exactly what you want. And but they're in it in, I guess, a respectful way. I mean, obviously, when the Sons of Allah come out, it's all it all goes out the window. But I mean, I can definitely see, with that I've seen some footage, from the Jersey crowds, and yeah, it can be pretty intense sometimes.
Well, you bring up Sons of Allah. Let me ask you this question. I know it was not this past show; it was the first show. So I can, and it's a lot of time has passed now since the first show. So I think I could ask this question now. You being a wrestling fan, and you were there when Blaze cut the promo
Yep.
in St. Johnsville.
Yes.
What was your thoughts when you heard what he was saying? I mean, I understand he's trying to get heat and everything, but what were your thoughts on it?
He's pushing the envelope. That's for sure. And that's the thing. It's one of those things where why they're doing it, and so you just hope that if something were to happen, that you don't get caught you being me, don't get caught in the crossfire, so to
No,
speak.
and
And there's been a few instances of that too, like back down in Connecticut, there was a guy, Dan DeMann. He's very well known around here. And he was cutting this promo, basically, cutting down. It was an outdoor event in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And so he was, and Bridgeport has, a lot of, public housing and stuff like that, and all that stuff. And so he's cutting this promo about, how he, about, ragging on poor people and people on welfare and stuff like this. And I'm just like looking, there's like an apartment complex in the back, and there's like people watching from like the windows and like and their doorsteps and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh dear God, I hope they don't get the wrong idea of this. And I'm just standing there. I'm just like, please, Dan, tone it down, please. I don't want
Well, like I remember sitting there and I was standing by Joe, the sound guy, when Blaze cut the promo in St. John's. I'm going, and mind you, I'm not looking at this from an in-ring perspective because obviously I'm not a competitor. I'm far from that. Like you said earlier, I'm the same thing. I am not athletic at all. That's why I decided to be on this side of the barricade, so to speak.
right there with you.
But I'm looking at it more as like a fan, and I'm sitting there, and maybe it's because I look at wrestling differently now because of this podcast, and because I kind of know more of the backstage stuff and more of like the behind the scenes stuff that most fans don't think of. And I remember listening to him talk, and I'm like, I get the fact he's trying to get heat, which I applaud both of them for. You don't see that a lot now in wrestling. But there's a line you have to draw in the sand, I feel, to when you stop going for the heat, especially the fact, I mean, you know this very well. Immortal shows are very kid oriented.
Yes.
And you have, and what I'm trying to say is this: when you look at Blaze and Ben, their character, their shtick, whatever you want to call it, would be more fit for like AEW, for example. More of like an adult oriented
TV-14.
Yeah. Again, I get the fact they're trying to get heat. I totally get that. But you kind of have to look at it and realize, okay, this is 2024, and especially also you have to remember, Immortal's live on IWTV now.
Yes, it is.
And that people don't think that part. And I'm like, and I'm not saying, that Immortal will get in trouble. I'm just saying it's more for Ben and Blaze that, you kind of have to think before you cut a promo.
No, absolutely. And, and you talk about, the PG show environment and, kids watching and whatnot. I kid you not, John, in Connecticut, there was a wrestler that, basically got unbooked and blacklisted from a promotion, because he called probably a 10, 11, 12, preteen kid fat. That's all he did was he called it. Well, I shouldn't say that's all he did. I mean, it's fat shaming. It's not cool. But I mean, he was a heel character. Like you were saying, trying to get heat, and he called the kid fat, and he didn't like it at all. And his mom got upset and complained to the promotion, and he never came back. And so it's just something as simple as that, and you're right. In this day and age, you got to be very careful with stuff like that, because you never know what could, trigger somebody. And it could be something that you think is relatively mild, but if it affects somebody, like, you don't know that, that kid might have been, getting bullied at school because, kid, or something like that. And then, to hear he went out for a night to get entertained, and then to get, called that, when he's looking to get away from the rest of that stuff and be entertained, it's like on the other end of that coin, it's like I totally see that. And so I think you're 100% right. It's a tough line to walk, because if you fall on the other side, the repercussions might not be pretty, and that's putting it mild. So,
and again, I'm not trying to say this to be, an ass about this or try to be, a Debbie Downer. I just look at it as, obviously people know I'm a fan of Immortal Championship Wrestling.
sure.
I mean, I have a sweatshirt of theirs. I actually finally got, merchandise from Immortal, and I'm a fan of, making these trips up to New York. Yes, granted, are they, not around the corner? Yes. Do they take a little bit of time? Yeah, of course they take a little bit of time, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I look at it more of, and like I said before, I want to reiterate this part. I get what they're doing, Ben and Blaze. They're trying to get heat. I totally get that. But there's a time and a place for it. And I just feel personally, if you're forcing the heat, you're going to get people who, I mean, the one thing I think I've seen any match I've seen with Ben and Blaze, either both of them or one or the other, as soon as that first note hits, they get booed right away.
Instantly.
I mean, great example. If you go back to the Rome show last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember if they were I think they must have been in the Rumble match, if I remember correctly. And all I remember from that was the second, I think Blaze came out first, actually, if memory serves me right.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he comes out, you see the 600 people in that Kennedy Arena waving the American flags, and you thought there must have been 1,000 people in that building.
Oh yeah.
So, they're going to get booed no matter what. So they're doing their job. I don't want to take that away from them, but I just think in the day of age we live in, and the fact that kids look up to these, and I know we're not talking WWE or AEW guys, but when you look at upstate New York or even Connecticut, there's not a lot of wrestling up there. I mean, yes, granted,
Right.
These kids will look up to WWE guys and AEW guys. I'm not taking that away from them. But if you have a family and you have a son or a daughter who's 8, 9 years old, and you take them to a wrestling show, they'll be like, "Oh, look, there's a wrestler. I want to go meet them." Are you going to want to have your child meet somebody who's then going to say what? I mean, do you see where I'm going with this?
No, 100%. Yeah, no, and then it's even like the flip side too, because if all it takes is someone to complain or take things up the ladder, and then you're in real trouble. You know what I mean? And then there's there could be consequences to that, and you don't want that. It could derail your momentum, and then word of mouth starts spreading, and then people start talking, and things could snowball very quickly these days. And that's the thing. I believe me, I get where you're coming from, because like we said, we love Immortal, and we don't want something like that, any negative impact, any negative connotations to come to that, because we love it so much, and we don't want to see the reputation that they've built get tarnished. So believe me,
Exactly. Well, now I'm going to change gears here for a second before we get into talk about the show coming up in April.
For sure.
You do Test of Strength and you do Immortal.
Yes.
Let's start with Test of Strength first. Is there one match or one show that you can look back on and you're saying, and you kind of pinch yourself, or not even pinch yourself, you're like, holy crap, I can't believe I was the ring announcer for that show?
Absolutely. There's a few moments that stick out, and most of them, I'll give you the highlight reel. The first one was Ichiban's very first match. I remember he came up to me, and I was talking, and he didn't even know what he wanted to do for his intro. And to see him go out there, and that's one of the things I love, is that I've seen a lot of, like, the first matches of a lot of good talent throughout my time doing this, and seeing them grow and evolve is really, it's very cool, and it's one of the parts of this I've enjoyed the most. But he was one of the very select few that he went out for that first match, and my jaw was on the floor, because I literally couldn't believe it was his first match. Like, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I mean, it looked like he had been doing this for a while. And I was just like, oh my God, like, this kid's got something. And I think he's proved that intuition right with the trail he's been blazing over the past few years. And so there was, going along those lines, the night he wrestled Low Key. Low Key was one of the guys I had watched in that I enjoyed watching in TNA, that got me back into that. And so it was a very cool generational clash. It was a great match. Crowd was real hot for it. and they were on fire. And I thought it was a great match, tremendous moment for Ichiban, and that was cool. The Invictus crossover shows, that was something really cool because that was the first time I met Ryan Peterson, and I had heard about Ryan Peterson. Um, he was always in the conversation for the best ring announcers in the Northeast, and I had always I had met Mike Falvo previously. At that point, I had met Rich Palladino, who is he's the OG in the New England area. Rich is a dude, and I'd always wanted to meet Ryan, and maybe do something with him and pick his brain a little bit, and considering he's has a wealth of experience. And so I got to meet him and work with him, and he's an amazing guy and an incredible talent. And so that was very cool. And there was a lot of great moments, and those are the ones that come to mind when I first think about it. And I'm sure there's a ton more that over the course of close to 5 years now that that are in here somewhere. I just need to find them once I start spooling a little more. But yeah, no, it's a great promotion. They've been gaining a lot of steam lately. And I'm happy to be a part of it. They got great talent, they got great fan base. And it's really it's one of my favorite places to be, hands down. So
Now, I'm going to flip it over to the other side. Same question, but for Immortal.
yes. So one of the first things that comes to mind for that is actually you remember the Greek god Papadon, right? During his run back there. So he actually he beat me up, and then beat me up after one of the after he lost the title to Mike Skyros. And first off, that was a great moment in and of itself because I had gotten to know Skyros through Test of Strength. And so seeing him, I always knew he had, the top guy potential. So seeing him win the title, cashing in that thing, and I think he blew him a kiss afterwards. It was really cool. And then, it's just that's something I just tell all my friends and family. It's like, hey, I got beat up once at a wrestling show. And so they're like, why are you bragging about that? But it's like, if you know, you know. So, but so that's always cool. One of the first shows I did with them, it might have even been the very first one, I got to work with Vicky Guerrero. That was she was so cool. She remembered my name, because I went over what she was going to do to kick off the show. And then during the right after intermission, I was talking to Mike, and he was over by her in her booth. And so after I talked to him, and I said, I shook Vicky's hand one more time, and I said, Vicky, was awesome working with you. You did a great job. It was a lot of fun watching you out there. And then she goes, oh, thanks, Matt. And I like literally turned around, my face was like bright red. I'm like, she remembered my name, like all the stuff like that. And so that was awesome. I'm actually quick note about me is that my favorite promotion of all time is probably the black and gold era of NXT. And so meeting Tyler Breeze, working with Tyler Breeze, talking with Tyler Breeze at this last one, I was a big Tyler Breeze fan back in the black and gold NXT days. And so getting to work with him was very cool. And like I said, they got a lot of great talent in there, and I got Richard Holiday back in the day. Holiday was another PAPW guy, so I drove up with him one time, got to know him a little better. So a lot of great moments, both on the camera and behind the scenes at Immortal. Like I said, Joe is one of my favorite sound guys. So I always love seeing him. And I know I'm gonna sound amazing every single time. And I met you at Immortal, so There's a lot of good times and a lot of good people. I can't say that enough, and I will always say that. So,
and Matt also I know there's one camera guy who always tries to make you look good.
yes, we talked about this a little before we hit the record button. My man, Mr. Dan, there, and I got to give a shout out to Jason Zapardi too. He's gotten some amazing shots of me as well. So he's definitely got the talent as well. But yeah, Mr. Dan, I know he does Immortal. He also does a promotion called New Age Wrestling out of Springfield, Mass, which I also work with them quite often. And so Mr. Dan, not only does he get, great shots of the action and, great promo pictures and, exactly what you want. Like, every now and then, like, I'll be walking back to the ring and I'll see him, kneeling at ringside, with the camera, and I'll just, flash a goofy pose. And that dude has the cat-like reflexes and the instinct to just grab these photos of me just looking absolutely ridiculous. And, and so he's a dual threat, because it's like you get like I don't know how many pictures of me that he's taken are meme worthy. It's quite a few in my book, but he also gets, like I said, incredible pictures of the great moments. And so he's definitely got the eye in many different facets, and he's a hell of a dude. So always good to see him as well.
No, I will say this much: when you look at upstate wrestling, and you don't ever think about the photographer side of things, but between Jason, Dan, and another photographer, Andrew Edler,
Mm-hmm.
the three of them are probably, and I'm being granted, I've seen a crap ton, especially down in Jersey. I've seen, between the 900 promotions down in Jersey, but I think with the three of them, they capture the moment. But what I always tell people is they capture it, but you still have to be there to experience it.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. It's that's why I like to shout out guys like Joe and Mr. Dan, is because those are kind of like the unsung heroes of these independent promotions, because they're there, but they don't get a lot of shine and stuff like that. Like me, like if there's a bad sound system, or the sound guy isn't good, and or sound person isn't good, and the levels are bad, and the music is overpowering the voice, I sound like garbage. So it doesn't matter how good my voice is if nobody can hear me. What the hell's the point?
Yeah.
So and again, it's like for there are a lot of great moments that like you said, you have to, the best part is being there for sure. If you're there in the moment, there nothing beats it. But a lot of these moments I like to look back at, like there was one photo that Mr. Dan took of at one of the Springfield shows, where it was the main event intros, and there was a picture of the champion just looking just stoic, ready, and me standing behind him, just I had my game face on, you know what I mean, like it was the go face. And so it just encapsulated that, like, that big fight feel in a picture, and then just like looking back on it, it's like, yeah, that was badass. Those guys, you got to give those guys a lot of credit, because I always try to when I can, because like I said, they really are the unsung heroes of
I'll no, so just piggybacking on what you were saying. You look at Joe, for example, with sound guy. People aren't going to turn around if, like, let's say there's. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let's say there's an Immortal show and it sounds off a little bit. They're not going to turn around and go, "Oh, it must be Joe, the sound guy, or it must be whoever's doing sound." They're going to look at it as, "Well, what's Matt doing wrong?"
Mm-hmm.
Because you're the guy who they see on TV.
Yep.
And people don't think, people look at wrestling, they think, oh, the only thing that matters is what goes on in the ring between the competitors. I'm like, that's true to a point. But the wrestlers aren't there if it's not for the promoters, if it's not for the backstage correspondents, if it's not for the commentators, if it's not for the people that you may not necessarily see on the camera, who may have a hand in it behind the scenes.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. I forget the exact quote. It's something about, takes a village to make something, or something to
I don't know
make.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I'll let you guys correct me in the comments, with the right thing. But yeah, and there's so many roles that that deserve more credit. Even down to the commentary teams. Like the commentary teams, the video crews. Because footage for wrestlers is very important, and because like even for me, like if I didn't have footage of me, and Slick Wagner Brown asked me for footage, if PAPW didn't have footage, then I would have said, sorry Slick, I don't have anything to show you, and then he might have not sent me that message inviting me in that one day.
Exactly.
So and that's just one instance, and so that all that stuff is important, and it goes without saying that give those guys their flowers. Give those guys their flowers. Like even you, like you filmed the last Immortal show, and you were telling me about how your arms were hurting afterwards, and that's the thing too. Like holding those cameras, it looks easy, it's not. And
no, I'll be the first one to say it. At first, I was like, wow, this is amazing. What happens? I'll kind of give a little bit of the backstory with that. Sean, who does we were talking about this beforehand. He does Battlefield.
Yes, and Sean's the man too. Real quick, and big shout out to Sean. For sure.
His company does the video work for Immortal, and I'd spoken to them beforehand about, because I've always wanted to get, even though I feel like I am in the business because of doing this podcast, I feel like I'm like a distant cousin in the business. And everybody tell that to, like, no, you're in the business because of the podcast and everything. So I said, but I'd like to finally get my foot in the door and actually, be a part of it in some way. And I got a message from Sean. I was at work when this happened, and he goes, hey man, he goes, would you ever have any interest in doing production work? I'm like, yeah, what do you have in mind? He goes, well, we need a camera operator for the show. I'm like, now in my head, I'm going, wait. I'm like, hold on. Knowing the matches that we saw at that show, which included the triple threat match of Spencer Slade, Sean Carr, and Facade, Christina Marie and Danny Moe, Garrett Holiday, and Big Time Bill Colley. I'm like, wait. I'm like, you want me to do that? Because a lot of times I've spoken to some camera guys, and they always tell me, oh, the first time they ever film, usually stuff that gets recorded to get put on YouTube. I'm like, and they're like, oh, so how are you doing it with you? I'm like, oh, my first time is gonna be going live on IWTV. And I'm like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, and like, oh, they're like, well, good luck. And it was a tryout run, and I remember getting there, and they're giving me the crash course, and it wasn't that difficult. You have to make sure certain things. But when you finally get out there, and you're standing, now mind you, I'm not in the ring per se, but I'm like on the outside of the ring.
Right.
You can feel everything. Because I'm used to sitting like in the stands, being like, oh, okay, Saturday night, this is fun. I'm sitting, I'm going, especially when Bane and Blaze came out, I never experienced the type of reaction I get from being by the ring. And I felt that one. I was like, oh my God. And 2 matches, actually, and you'll know which 2 matches I'm talking about here. The Pat Sawyer match, when he took on Madman Richie. There was one point in the match where they almost took me out. There was one part where they were in the corner where I was. And what must have happened was my foot got caught under the mat or something.
Oh,
So all of a sudden I go to do one of these, like try to catch and Pat comes up and grabs me, and he goes, I got you, don't worry about it. And I hear over the headset, I hear, great, we almost lost a goddamn cameraman, and we're only 2 matches in. Then there was the Guantanamo Bay the no rules match.
Yeah, that one was absolute chaos.
Yeah. Do you know what it was like being ringside when you got two of the guys coming from this way, you got two of the guys coming from this way, and I'm trying to sit here with the camera going, okay, who do I film? Who do I film? So literally, it looks like, I kid you not, for about 5 minutes, I'm going like this. And I remember they're like just put one person. I'm like, okay, but who do you want me to? Because and in my head, mind you, they had kendo sticks, they had signs. I was like, I'm gonna get hit in the head. It's gonna happen. Just
Right. Well, I was gonna say, because not only do you have to, decide what shots you want to get, but you also have to make sure you're steering clear of all the
I mean, I can't tell you how often. And then I remember at one point Richie dropped his necklace on the floor,
mm-hmm.
and I had to kind of use my foot, because the problem is people don't realize that it's not like in WWE where they have the cameras on the shoulder and they can walk around without a problem. They're connected to Ethernet cable, and for anybody who's watching this who was born after the year 2000 or 2002, may not know what Ethernet cable is. It's like the rotary phones that people of the olden age used to have. It's an olden thing. I think I just pissed off everybody who watches this who's about the age of like 50 right now.
Hey, my grandma had one of those rotary phones, so believe me, I keep the memory alive, my friend. Keep the memory alive.
But the funny thing is, I don't have a lot of room to work. I have enough room to go either this way or go this way. I don't have a lot of room to go around the whole thing. So I'm sitting, I'm going, okay, I'm going to get hit. Then the one other moment I just want to bring up, then we'll get back to the stuff here.
No worries.
The main event, in the Dirty Breeze Stenson Braun match, there was one part, because the one thing they kept telling us was, be like on the ring. So there was moments where my elbows were like on the ring, edge of the ring, going, okay, I gotta get the shot. And at one point, Dirty Dango goes to do a baseball slide towards me, and he used my foot as my stomach is almost like a launching pad. And I'm like, now mind you, when I was heavier, I didn't feel it. Now that I'm down 65 pounds, I'm like, oh, that hurt.
Yep.
I'm like, oh. And the problem is, it wasn't like just a simple tap. It was like a real, like, you felt it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I got my.
Yeah, you put it in there.
I want to look ahead. That's an understatement. I will look ahead towards the next Immortal show, April 13th, Road to Immortality, live from the Kennedy Arena. You can get tickets through purplepass.com. You're not going to want to miss this show. I know one of the big things is his brother Jonas's final show he is doing.
Is it really?
So he's retiring.
Oh, man.
After this show, which actually works out very poetically, because he made his debut. UWE made their debut with Immortal at the Rome show last year.
Right.
So it kind of works out perfectly that he can wrap up his career. Because the thing is, I had spoken to him about it. He started, it was almost like DDP, almost to an extent, where DDP started off very late in life training to be a wrestler. And I think realistically, with Brother Jonas, I think it's kind of more of a, he kind of lived everything he wanted to. And I mean, yes, granted, he's not going to WWE per se, but I mean, he's content with what he did. And so you have that coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You have the tag title match with Team Friendship taking on Edge of Hope, or as I'm now trying to get the hashtag going, let Adam Stone finish his story. Well, I say that because I feel like every Immortal show I have been to, and I've been to quite a bit of them now, Adam Stone is always either in a regular tag team title match or a multi-man tag team match, but somehow he's always in the tag title match of every show that I've been to. Exactly. And I said that at the show in Dwaynesburg. I'm like, do you realize you've been fighting for this title now for as long as I've been coming to Immortal? And he kind of looked at me. I'm like, yeah. And I had to remind him back at the St. Johnsville show last year, it was Power Supply versus Sons of Allah. Then it led to the fatal 4-way at the Utica show last year, which Edge of Hope won. Oh no, Edge of Hope didn't win that one. They won at Westmoreland in September. But I'm like, eventually you're going to win these tag titles. But you have that. Obviously, we have the Northeast title on the line with Shane Sense and Pat Sawyer. Not confirmed yet, but I have a feeling we're probably going to get Sean Carr versus Garrett Holiday. That's just my guess.
I would like to see that.
But obviously, then we got the Rumble match. The one thing I like with that show is it's not a long show because half the show is the Rumble.
Exactly. Yeah, and I remember. I think I was at the one last year. That was one of the ones I was able to do for Immortal last year, and the Rome crowd.
The first time you were in that.
I think you're right. I remember that. Yeah, because I remember you came up there, and then we were talking, and then you made the offer. Hey, come on the podcast sometime, and we finally did it. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, the Rome crowds are always great. The Kennedy Arena up there, it's awesome to see. All the people in the chairs. You even got some people in the bleachers. I mean, they pack that place, and it's great to see. And there's always some surprises. And there was I remember Sideburns I think came out last year with the Goldberg-esque chant. So that was kind of cool. Pretty sure we got Karen Bam Bam in there, and I think she's going to be back this year too, which is I love seeing Bam Bam. So that's always good. But yeah, no, I love Rumble matches. They're fun. They got a lot of surprises. If I recall too, I think Skyros almost went coast to coast last year, but he came up just a little short and was the last person eliminated. But
yeah, because I think that was the infamous Fireball incident.
Yes, I think you're right.
Because I remember when Ben won it, and I'm going, and in my head I'm like, he's gonna be a transitional champion. He's gonna be a transitional champion. And Ryan made the joke with me on the show that, I was so happy. And I remember it led to, I think it was the Kobalskill show then, when Garrett ended up defeating him for the belt. And I remember, but yeah, you had that moment. I'm trying to think of the other. That's where UWE made their debut. Yep. That's the first time I had ever heard of UWE, was at that show.
And I'm pretty sure that's where I made that botch and I mispronounced Oneida. So
Yes. Now I remember that one.
Oh man, it's all coming back to me now.
But the only thing I will say about that show, maybe it was because it was in an arena like Kennedy Arena, I was freezing my ass off.
Yep. Yeah, no, in the hockey rinks, I always find it, because I've had a few shows at hockey rinks in the off season in Connecticut as well, and yeah, they keep the temperature nice and chilly there, even if there's no ice.
Yeah, because I remember, I've been to shows now where I've been to shows outside where it's been blistery sunny, and I'm like, okay, it can't be that bad. And I remember sitting there, and I didn't bring a jacket because I'm like, oh, what's the point? It's April. It shouldn't be that cold. And I'm sitting there, and I have a short sleeve shirt on. I'm like, at the end of the show, I'm like, get me back in the car. I'm freezing my ass off. As soon as I got back in the car, I blasted the heat.
Yeah, exactly.
But you also have to realize, for somebody like me, that show ends at 10. I'm not home till probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning. No,
I hear you there. I'm not that far ahead of you on nights like that, but I mean, that's the thing. It is, it's, as they say, it's the life we chose, and so I just get myself a couple of Red Bulls for the ride home to make sure I don't fall asleep and make the trip, and try to sleep in the following Sunday.
The funny thing is, I always make the joke to people. I travel like I'm a wrestler, but I don't get paid like I'm a wrestler. But it's true, though, because I've done the trip now where I've gotten home, especially from upstate. I've pretty much have pinpointed down that I can be home anywhere between 3 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I've done that trip. The thing is, I've done that so many times.
Yeah, exactly. And the longest I've ever did was I did a show up in Maine, and that was in the Bangor area. So it was 5.5, somewhere between 5.5 and 6, because obviously you're making some rest stops, during that trip. And I remember that I got home from that show at like 3, 4 in the morning, and I was filming a hype video for another show I was doing the following weekend that very next day. So, and they wanted to do it early in the morning. So I remember it's like I got there and I'm like sitting on my couch and it's like 4 in the morning at this point. I'm like, well, I got 2 Red Bulls. So I can either stay up, drink these 2 Red Bulls and stay up and pull an all-nighter, or I go to bed for 2 hours, wake up and probably be more, PO'd and bothered than if I just stayed up. So I ended up staying up, powering through the hype show recording, and got home and pretty much slept the entire rest of the day except to get up and eat dinner and clean up for 2 hours. But oh man, that was a hike. Worth it though. Worth it.
Well, I got one story for you. We talked about the Utica show before. Last year, I went with obviously Ryan was doing the ring announcing, and I don't know if you remember. There was a day we had that night we had that really weird monsoon storm.
Yes.
Okay. Now the problem is the storm was coming from upstate New York down to Long Island.
Oh.
Now, pull back the curtain a little bit. Ryan and I both live on Long Island. So I was doing the drive back. Ryan obviously was, taking a nap for a little bit. And, it was drizzling by the time we left. Wasn't any issues. And we're on the thruway. Now, most of the time I'm on the thruway. I've been on the thruway hundreds of times now. I'm normally doing 70, 75, somewhere in that ballpark.
Makes sense.
I was going 5 miles an hour. You couldn't see in front of you. It was getting that bad.
Holy shnikes.
So mind you, this wasn't like it was just. You can hear the rain come down. That it actually woke Ryan up, and he goes, "What the hell is going on?" I'm like, it's just a slight rainstorm, nothing much." So we're going over the Whites. I don't remember if it was the Whitestone or Throgs Neck Bridge. And normally, I don't go that fast over the bridge. Like 5 miles was like the limit.
Good.
To the point
God.
we get to the cross island, and Ryan, he wakes up and he goes, "John, pull over." He goes, let's sit this out for a while. Let's let the storm. All of a sudden we sit down, and all of a sudden, not even 30 seconds later, I hear in the background, whoop, 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 whoop. I'm like, oh shit.
Oh God.
The cop was about to write me a ticket.
For what?
Ryan talked him out of it. So then we started going a little bit, and it kept coming down. So we get to the part where Ryan looks at me. He goes, "You want me to take over?" I go, "Yes, please." Mind you, I can drive in that weather, but not in that. That weather took it to a whole nother level.
Right. That's some next level stuff right there.
So we pull over in the middle of a rainstorm. Ryan and I decided to play Chinese fireman in the middle of the rainstorm. Finally get back to Ryan. It's 4:00. He goes, "John, sit here for a while. Let go out." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Let me get home." Because I can tell, I was trying to get to that part where if I, one this way, I would have been out. So I said, "Let me get home." I think I had a Red Bull or had something in the car. Like I said, I didn't get home till 5:00 in the morning.
Sheesh.
That was the longest it had ever taken me to get home from a show.
Oh yeah, no, that's.
Would I do it again though? In a heartbeat.
And that's the thing. For me, the journey is part of the fun, especially, like I said, if you have someone you ride with, you mentioned riding with Ryan. I've had, the pleasure and the honor of riding with, wrestlers, other people involved in the shows. And, it's granted, that wasn't, a very fun experience, but it's something you can look back at. It's a story to tell, and sometimes you get more stories, in the car rides leading up to it than you do, at the show itself. And so, or equally as much, and so it's the journey is also part of the fun too. And despite some of the long ones, again, like you said, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, and like I said, I don't get paid for a lot of these. I do it because I love the sport. I love this crazy world. But I also do it for the other reason of, I always tell every promoter, if you ever need me to do anything, I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
I always offer my support. Be like, look, yes, granted, am I going to walk into a ring? Probably not. But if, like, let's say, for example, one of the commentators calls out, or somebody calls all, from behind the scenes, they can look at me and go, hey, can you do this? I'll be like, yeah. As long as you give me like a crash course beforehand of how to do it, I don't care. But Matt, I appreciate you hopping on with us tonight a lot. It was a blast having you on. Before we let you go, what events do you have coming up that you like to promote, and where can the fans connect with you on social media?
Absolutely. So, social media wise, you can find me on Facebook, Matt DaCorte, MattDa, capital Corte. That is where you can find me on Facebook. Instagram is at MJDACORTE. First initial of my first name, first initial of my middle name, and my last name on Instagram. Those are the only two I have. I gave up on Twitter just because I just didn't like it, and so got rid of that. But Facebook and Instagram is where you can find me. I post all the shows I'm going to be at, goofy pictures, serious pictures, promo pictures, and pictures of my physical media and action figure collections. So there's that. And upcoming shows this Saturday, I actually have a double shot. Speaking of Red Bulls, I'm going to need a few of those. The Test of Strength sister promotion called Legacy is Timeless will have Certified in the afternoon, and then immediately at the conclusion of that, I am booking it up to Massachusetts for Focus Pro Wrestling. Focus Pro is a great promotion if you're in the New England, Massachusetts area, around the Boston area. It's in Braintree. It's their first event at the Braintree venue, so we're hoping to pack the place and have a good show there. It's the same thing with LIT. I know that's important to it's important to all of us that are a part of it. But it's the brainchild of the GMX, Alex Rojas. Alex is one of my really good friends, one of my strongest supporters. So definitely, if you're want to go to one or go to both, whichever you're closest to, what have you, that's where I'll be. I mentioned it a little bit, but Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, August 6th, going to be at Armada Brewery in New Haven, Connecticut. We're going to be having live wrestling outside and WrestleMania Night 1 on the big screen inside. So you want to watch some WrestleMania, you want to see some live wrestling, you get the best of both worlds. And if you're over 21, you get to enjoy some great drinks too. Then the weekend after that, we already talked about it, Road to Immortality, Immortal Championship Wrestling coming back to Rome. And then rounding it out, I don't know them off the top of my head, but I think I got New Age Wrestling in there. I'm pretty sure a promotion called Coliseum Pro Wrestling in Connecticut I have at the end of next month. And Coliseum is a really cool up-and-coming promotion in Connecticut. They've been gaining a lot of steam. Love working with them. So lots of cool things on the horizon. And stay tuned, because I'm sure there's a lot of more great stuff coming down the pipeline for the rest of the year as well.
Absolutely. Like I said before, guys, go check out Matt DaCorte. He is in the class, like I was saying before, of top ring announcers in the Northeast, which includes Ryan Peterson, Mike Falvo, Shane Fair, Rich Palladino, Larry Legend. The list goes on and on and on. But Matt, like I said, I appreciate you coming on tonight. The door is always open for you. Anytime you have a show come up that you like to promote, the door is always open for you to come back on.
Absolutely. This will not be the last time for sure. I had a blast today, John. Thank you so much for all the kind words, and thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. For Matt DaCorte, I'm John. This has been Around the Ropes, YouTube exclusive. Catch you guys next.